Traps can eat through the home.
Remember when science fiction didn't try to be friendly? Before space got heroic and merchandised into lunchboxes, it was claustrophobic and absolutely not on your side. In 1979, Ridley Scott directed Alien, a sci-fi horror film that quietly rewrote the rules for what space movies were allowed to do. Starring Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley alongside Tom Skerritt, John Hurt, Ian Holm, Yaphet Kotto, and Veronica Cartwright, Alien wasn't about exploration or wonder. It was about blue-collar workers making bad decisions in the dark with a creature that treated humans like disposable packaging. Today, we're counting down 15 weird and wild facts about Alien. Stick around for number 1 because there's a real human skull hidden inside the Xenomorph's head, and the reason it's there is even creepier than it sounds. Now, before we jump in, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still checks behind the shower curtain because of this movie. Now, let's go back to the film that made space feel very, very small. With number 15, the Facehugger was stuffed with real animal organs. The Facehugger's dissection scene in Alien looks revolting for a reason. Most prop departments would rather not discuss it though. Ridley Scott skipped the latex catalog and went grocery shopping at a butcher.
The real thing's always better, so then I had orders coming from a very good fishmongers in Shepperton Village who had oysters, clams.
Scott had one mandate for the creature's biology: wet. Plastic looked fake. Rubber dried out under the light, so the team packed the Facehugger prop with oysters, clams, scallops, and sheep intestines, actual sheep intestines, creating a thing that looked, moved, and unfortunately smelled like it had no business existing outside of a biohazard container. When Ian Holm peels the creature open on camera as ash, those glistening organs spilling across the table aren't sculpted silicone.
All right, go.
Cover it with a damn thing, will you?
That's fine. That's a reflex action.
The smell reportedly hit the cast and crew in waves between takes, turning an already unpleasant prop into a full sensory experience that nobody asked for. The genius was in the specificity. Your brain can forgive a rubber monster. It can spot a silicone mold from across a dark theater, but real organic tissue registers differently. Weaponized discomfort funded by a trip to the local butcher. Number 14. No one knew what would happen in the Chestburster scene. The Chestburster scene in Alien has been analyzed, parodied, and referenced for over 4 decades. But the real story is what happened behind the camera, because the cast was almost as blindsided as the audience. The actors had read the script. They knew John Hurt's character was going to die. Ridley Scott wanted genuine reactions though, so he treated the practical effects like classified intelligence.
Its t-shirt pulled, tightly on it. Then you got a razor blade this gently, because when that thing hits, you want it to burst it, because you're going to have a one shot, and in there's going to be bloodlines on high pressure pumps.
Their first clue that the day was about to go horribly sideways came from the crew. When the actors walked onto set, camera operators and technicians were wearing plastic raincoats and face shields. Sigourney Weaver later said that's the moment her survival instincts started firing. Protective gear on a film set is never really a good sign. Hidden beneath the table were high-pressure hoses loaded with gallons of fake blood and real animal organs. Veronica Cartwright caught the worst of it. The blood cannon hit her directly in the face.
And, I remember blood. I looked over and Veronica had blood all over her face.
Her scream was real. Her fall was real. She went down with her legs in the air, boots pointing at the ceiling, and Scott kept every frame because that kind of terror doesn't come with a second take. The aftermath was grim, even by Alien standards. Yaphet Kotto reportedly retreated to his dressing room and refused to talk to anyone for hours. Cartwright needed time to recover.
8 o'clock in the morning, something like that. 3 hours, 4 hours goes by. So Harry's in the aisles. He's playing music. I think we even went to lunch and we came back and we're still sitting up there.
That's why the scene still hits harder than anything CGI has produced since. The audience were watching 7 people discover in real time that their director set up an ambush and pointed a meat cannon at them. The terror on screen is a document of the terror on set, and 45 years later, you can still see the exact moment each of them realizes this isn't what they signed up for. Number 13, the alien slime was made from private time. The Xenomorph's design budget reads less like a Hollywood effects requisition and more like the world's most disturbing pharmacy receipt. Ridley Scott had one non-negotiable demand for the creature. It needed to look perpetually lubricated. Dry rubber wasn't going to cut it. The creature needed to glisten, drip, and secrete like something that had never once in its evolutionary history encountered a towel. The solution was KY jelly.
KY jelly was very much in fashion at the time, and I think that was put on everything that moved in front of the camera, on the alien, it was dripping from everywhere.
Gallons upon gallons of it pumped over the suit continuously to keep the alien drooling from every visible surface. The effects team sometimes cut it with water to get longer, nastier strands, fine-tuning viscosity like sommeliers of disgust. For the sinewy tendons and translucent skin details, H.R. Geiger and the crew reached for shredded condoms. They gave the creature a biological texture that rubber and plastic simply couldn't replicate. The Xenomorph's anatomy was essentially built from drugstore supplies and nightmares. Then there was the head, the real engineering marvel buried under all that goo. The close-up hero head, designed by Carlo Rambaldi, contained about 900 moving components. Motors, cables, levers, and springs all working in concert to control the lips, jaw, and that iconic telescoping inner mouth. Up to 7 technicians operated it simultaneously, while Bolaji Badejo wore the suit, all of them presumably coated in KY by the end of each shooting day. Everything stayed soaked all the time. The creature never looks clean, never looks artificial, and never looks finished because it was designed to register as a living system that won't stop secreting. Less a costume than a biological event, the props department unleashed and barely contained. Number 12, H.R. Geiger's art was so disturbing, customs thought it was real. Most artists dream of their work being called lifelike. H.R. Geiger achieved that, and it got his shipment seized by federal authorities.
I like if they are disturbed. Yes, that's good. I hate if they don't look at it, or I have people they like my stuff, or others they hate it.
Which is either the greatest compliment an artist has ever received or the worst day a customs agent has ever had. When Geiger shipped his biomechanical art for exhibition, customs officials cracked open the crates and did not see paintings. They saw what they believed were photographs of real mutilated bodies, fleshy, detailed, and so biologically convincing that the immediate institutional response was to impound everything and launch an investigation. His Necronomicon series, the same body of work that would eventually inspire every inch of the Xenomorph.
There are also tubes from an old Rolls Royce, there are from vertebrae, from snakes, and it was a mixture from everything together.
Featured airbrushed images with skin tones, muscle textures, and anatomical gradients so precise they stopped registering as art. The machinery in his paintings looked grown, the flesh looked engineered. Custom agents aren't trained art critics, they're trained to spot contraband. And Geiger's work tripped every alarm in their pattern recognition toolkit. When Geiger heard about the seizure, he responded with the energy of a man who had been waiting his entire career for exactly this moment. He reportedly asked where, precisely, they thought he could have photographed such subjects. In hell, perhaps? The guy didn't even have to try to be unsettling. He just shipped his portfolio and let federal law enforcement do the marketing for him. When your art gets impounded because trained professionals can't tell it from a crime scene, you've officially graduated from disturbing to evidence. And that's the guy Fox handed the creature design to. Sleep tight, everybody. Number 11, the alien egg was too sexual, so Geiger made it religious. H.R. Geiger's first design for the alien egg had a single slit across the top. When it opened, the resemblance was, let's say, anatomically immediate. So immediate that 20th Century Fox executives reportedly stared at the prototype in silence, looked at each other, and collectively decided this was not a conversation they wanted to have with Censors. The problem wasn't that the egg was disturbing, the whole movie was disturbing. The problem was how it was disturbing. Audiences were supposed to feel dread when the egg opened, not shift awkwardly in their seats for reasons that had nothing to do with extraterrestrial parasites. The studio told Geiger to fix it. Geiger's solution was magnificently unhinged. Rather than toning the design down, he split the single slit into 4 sections. Closed, the top now formed a cross. Open, it peeled back like a flower or a ritual offering, depending on how much Geiger art you've been exposed to. Religious on the outside, but a biological nightmare on the inside. Geiger didn't make the design less provocative.
The eggs were designed and obviously made, and they would be the way up they were, with the aperture at the top, with a hydraulic opening, which would open looking very threatening.
He just made it provocative in a direction nobody knew how to object to. Number 10, the sets got smaller every day and no one was told. Ridley Scott didn't trust jump scares to make the Nostromo feel terrifying, so he did something worse. He shrank the ship around his actors without telling them. As filming progressed, Scott quietly ordered the construction crew to move the set walls inward, just enough that the change was invisible to anyone standing inside, but impossible to ignore on a subconscious level. Hallways that felt manageable in week 1 became tight by week 3. Ceilings crept lower, corners closed in. The ship slowly compressed around the cast like a slow-motion trash compactor with better lighting. The actors were never informed. They just felt it. Scott was banking on a simple truth. You don't need to tell people they're trapped, you just make the walls prove it. And he didn't stop there. During the air duct scene, Tom Skerritt was drenched in sweat and visibly struggling. He asked for a break, but Scott said no. The sweat stayed, the exhaustion stayed, and all of it ended up on camera. The Nostromo sets were also built as a single continuous maze rather than as separate soundstage rooms. Actors couldn't step off camera and grab a coffee. To leave, they had to physically walk through the ship over and over. The line between set and story dissolved. It stopped feeling like a place they were pretending to be trapped in and started feeling like a place they were actually trapped in. So when the crew on screen looks worn down, claustrophobic, and increasingly unhinged, that's not performance. That's a director waging psychological warfare on his own cast and letting the footage keep the receipts. Number 9, the alien actor was literally found in a bar. The most terrifying creature in sci-fi history got cast because a guy needed a drink after work. Bolaji Badejo was a Nigerian art student living in London who had never acted a day in his life. In 1978, casting agent Peter Ardrum was hunting for something very specific. Someone tall, skeletal, and unsettling enough that the Xenomorph wouldn't look like a guy doing cosplay in a rubber suit. Then he walked into a London bar and spotted Badejo. Standing 6 foot 6 inches tall with impossibly long limbs, Badejo had exactly the wrong proportions Ridley Scott and H.R. Geiger wanted.
And his name was Bolaji. So the guy had gone over to him in the pub and said, the old line, how would you like to be in movies? And the guy had a kind of North London accent.
Other candidates, including Peter Mayhew, got rejected for being too broad, too human-shaped, and Badejo didn't need padding. He was the padding. All sharp angles and negative space, like a praying mantis that learned how to hate you. Because he'd never acted, the production trained him in mime and Tai Chi to control every movement. That's why the Xenomorph doesn't charge or stalk, it slides. Your brain keeps trying to classify it as human and it keeps failing. After Alien, Badejo never acted again. He returned to Nigeria, opened an art gallery, and lived quietly until his death in 1992 at just 39 years old from sickle cell anemia. Which means the most iconic movie monster of all time was played exactly once by an art student who went out for a drink and accidentally traumatized generations. Number 8, Ridley's storyboards were so good, Fox doubled the budget. Most directors walk into a pitch meeting with a speech. Ridley Scott walked in with a pencil and ended up doubling his own paycheck. When Scott first sat down with 20th Century Fox, Alien was budgeted at a modest $4.2 million. Studio shorthand for keep it cheap, keep it quick, and pray something sticks. The executives expected a conversation, maybe a mood board or some polite begging. Scott laid drawings on the table instead. Coming from an art school and commercial background, the man didn't pitch in paragraphs, he pitched in images. Hand-drawn, obsessively detailed storyboards, later nicknamed Ridleygrams, mapped out lighting, scale, shadow, and movement for the opening stretch of Alien.
He
original concepts of Alien were basically a series of storyboards, very detailed storyboards. Ridley Scott is well known for storyboarding every single scene.
They were fully composed shots, cinematography on paper, rendered by a guy who clearly hadn't slept in a while and didn't plan to start. The room went quiet. The good kind of quiet, of course. The kind where executives realize they've been dramatically underestimating what's in front of them. Fox doubled the budget to roughly $8.4 million on the strength of drawings alone. Scott, naturally, kept pushing. Larger connected sets for the Nostromo, a fully built escape shuttle for the final act, more corridors, more steel, more dread per square foot. By the time camera stopped rolling, the budget had crept to around $11 million, nearly triple the original number. Fox held its breath. Then, Alien made over $105 million worldwide, and that breath turned into a very relieved exhale. Okay, we're going to take a quick pause before something else crawls out of the shadows. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Alien's behind-the-scenes chaos, make sure to hit that like button and tell us in the comments what moment from this movie still lives in your head rent-free. Alright, now let's get back to the nightmare with number 7. Alien only got made because Star Wars blew the doors off. Before Star Wars turned spaceships into ATMs, 20th Century Fox wanted absolutely nothing to do with Alien. Dan O'Bannon had been shopping the script around, a dark R-rated space horror about blue-collar truckers getting picked off by something with teeth inside its teeth. Studios kept passing. Fox's response landed somewhere between a yawn and a shrug. Star Wars fixed that overnight. Suddenly, Fox couldn't greenlight space movies fast enough, and Alien happened to be the only finished spaceship script already gathering dust on someone's desk. Ridley Scott got swept up in the same wave. The man had been prepping a medieval romance based on Tristan and Isolde. One viewing of Star Wars later, the knights were gone, and Scott was neck deep in acid blood and facehuggers.
It's crazy on that. It's tearing his skull. I know. It's not coming off without tearing his face off with it.
Career pivots don't get much more dramatic than trading Arthurian legend for extraterrestrial body horror. The beautiful irony is that Fox bankrolled Alien expecting another Star Wars, but what they got was its nightmare cousin. A film where space wasn't full of wonder, it was full of things that wanted to lay eggs in your chest. It worked out fine though. Alien proved science fiction didn't need to be fun to print money. It just needed to make audiences afraid to breathe for 2 hours. Fox chased the wrong hit at exactly the right moment and exactly funded a masterpiece that they never wanted. Number 6, Veronica Cartwright thought she was Ripley. Veronica Cartwright flew to London believing she was the lead of a major sci-fi film. She found out that she wasn't during a wardrobe fitting.
What? And end up like the others? No, you're out of your mind.
You got a better idea?
Yes. I said that we abandoned the ship.
Which is a truly spectacular way to ruin someone's week. Cartwright had auditioned for Ellen Ripley, read for it in Los Angeles, read for it again in London, got told by her agent the part was hers, done deal, lead of the movie, start packing baby. Then she showed up to get fitted for her costume and the wardrobe team cheerfully informed her they were ready to measure her for Lambert. Cartwright corrected them, and they corrected her right back. Ripley had gone to a then unknown actress named Sigourney Weaver, and apparently everyone knew this except the woman who'd crossed an ocean thinking otherwise. Cartwright was understandably gutted. She openly disliked Lambert at first, describing the character as nervous, emotional, and constantly falling apart. The exact opposite of the steely hero she'd prepared to play. But something shifted once she sat with the script. Lambert wasn't weak. She was the only crew member reacting the way an actual human being would. Terrified, desperate to leave, sensing the danger before anyone else admitted it was real. Everyone else followed protocol. Lambert followed her gut. The audience just happened to share it. That emotional rawness carried straight into her performance. Cartwright never got to play Ripley, but Lambert gave Alien something the hero couldn't. A character who reminded the audience that in a real emergency, most of us are never going to be Ripley. Number 5, kids were used to make the space jockey look colossal. One of the most haunting images in Alien, that gigantic fossilized pilot slumped over its controls like it had been dead since before Earth figured out fire.
It's been dead a long time. Fossilized. Looks like it's grown out of the chair.
Was faked using children and camera angles. Hollywood magic at its most beautifully ridiculous. The Space Jockey set wasn't actually massive. Ridley Scott couldn't afford warehouse-sized builds, so he went old school in the most literal way possible. He grabbed his 2 young sons and the son of cinematographer Derek Van Lent, stuffed them into custom-made miniature spacesuits, and had them waddle through the cockpit.
To make the set even look bigger, they had kids, and 2 of the kids were Ridley's kids, and they both passed out in those little suits.
That's it. That was the trick. Smaller bodies in the frame, and the audience's brain fills in the rest. If the astronauts look that tiny, everything around them must be enormous. Forced perspective, the oldest trick in the filmmaker's toolbox, and still one of the most effective. Put something small in the foreground, and the audience does the rest of the work for you. The result is pure illusion, and it works embarrassingly well. That single scene sold one of Alien's biggest ideas without a single line of dialogue. The universe doesn't revolve around us. We're not brave explorers charting the unknown. We're trespassers in someone else's cathedral, and the owner has been dead for longer than we've been alive. Number 4, Jonesy the cat was played by 4 different cats. Every crew member aboard the Nostromo was expendable except the cat. The cat had a stunt double, a body double, and a Union-level protection plan that most of the human cast would have envied. Jonesy looks like one ordinary ginger tabby in Alien, but behind the scenes, he was a 4-cat operation. 4 nearly identical orange tabbies, each hired for a specific skill set. One Jonesy specialized in being held calmly. One could scamper on cue. One handled the hissing and panic shots. And one existed primarily to sit there and look like a cat, which, fair enough, is the only role every cat on Earth is already nailing. The most famous Jonesy moment is that spine-crawling hiss when the alien drops down behind Brett.
Come on, baby.
Ridley Scott engineered it by hiding a German Shepherd behind a screen and yanking it away at the last second. The real irony of the production was the safety hierarchy. The cats were treated like royalty. They were monitored, protected, never exposed to anything stressful behind the occasional hidden dog. Meanwhile, Sigourney Weaver discovered mid-shoot that she was allergic to the combination of cat hair and the glycerin sprayed on her skin to simulate sweat.
And I looked at the cat, and luckily they called lunch. I went upstairs, I was crying because I realized I was allergic to Jones. And I thought, gosh, it was probably so hard for Ridley to find 4 matching cats. They're gonna get rid of me because I'm allergic to the cat.
She had to take breaks, adjust her makeup routine, and eventually ditch the glycerin entirely. Jonesy got a handler and a heated trailer. Ripley got Benadryl and determination. By the time Aliens rolled around, the original Jonesy quartet had retired and a new cat named Boris took over the role. Different cat, but same energy. Sit in the carrier, survive the apocalypse, let the humans sort out the rest. Number 3, Ridley Scott was the studio's 5th choice. The man who turned a spaceship corridor into the most claustrophobic place in cinema was Fox's 5th pick for the job, behind directors who thought the whole thing sounded like garbage. When 20th Century Fox started shopping Alien around, they aimed high and missed repeatedly. Robert Altman reportedly reacted with open confusion. The man behind Nashville and MASH couldn't figure out why anyone would willingly make a space monster movie. Robert Aldrich took one look at the creature concept, shrugged, and suggested they slap some guts on a guy's face and call it a day. Others circled the project like it smelled funny, which, given the Xenomorph's life cycle, it probably would have. To all of them, Alien sounded disposable, a paycheck wrapped in latex. Meanwhile, a commercial director named Ridley Scott had just released The Duelists, a meticulous, visually gorgeous debut that caught the producer's attention. The studio had spent months looking for someone safe. They ended up with a filmmaker who understood that the scariest thing you can do in space is show less, slower, and from angles that make the audience feel like prey. Number 2, it was almost called Starbeast. One of the coldest, most effective titles in cinema history started life sounding like something you'd find in a dollar bin at a gas station. Dan O'Bannon's original working title was Starbeast.
A couple of years down the line, I decided to do Dark Star as a horror movie instead of a comedy, and that was the germ of Alien.
Even he knew it was bad. Studio executives heard Starbeast and mentally shelved it next to every other cheap sci-fi pitch they'd ignored that week. The fix turned out to be embarrassingly simple. O'Bannon noticed the word alien kept appearing throughout his own script, not just describing the creature, but everything around it. Alien space, alien technology, alien biology. So he did the obvious thing that somehow took months to figure out. He named the movie Alien. It didn't promise adventure or explain the plot, it just sat there on the poster like a warning label someone had slapped on a biohazard container. Overnight, the project went from sounding like a drive-in double feature to sounding like something that might actually ruin your sleep. The original Starbeast script never fully vanished though. It floated around fan circles for decades as a cult artifact before Dark Horse Comics finally adapted it in 2020 as Alien, the original screenplay. A nice second life for a title that deserved retirement. Number 1, there's a real human skull inside the alien's head. Now, we've covered butcher shop props, traumatized actors, and a customs investigation, but we saved this one for last because it might be the single most unsettling detail in the entire production, and for a movie built on unsettling details, that's saying something. H.R. Geiger could have sculpted a fake skull, molded one from resin, cast it in plaster, done what every other creature designer on Earth would do, and moved on with his day. Instead, he sourced a real human skull and embedded it directly inside the Xenomorph's head, because H.R. Geiger wasn't interested in close enough. Beneath the translucent, elongated dome, right where a face should be but aggressively isn't, sits a human skull, grinning at nobody. Now, here's what makes it work. You never consciously see it while watching the film. The lighting is too dark, the dome is too smoky, the surface too busy dripping with slime to let your eyes land anywhere specific, but your brain catches the symmetry anyway. Something about that shape registers in a place that you can't quite name. You know something human is in there, you just can't prove it. Behind the scenes, it's obvious. High-resolution production photos show the skull sitting right under the dome, completely visible, almost casual, like it's been waiting for you to notice. And that's the whole trick. That's why the Xenomorph still works when most creature designs from 1979 have aged into nostalgia. Geiger understood something that no amount of CGI has replicated since.
Because the Giger is the author, number one, of the creation of Alien, I don't suggest anything about modify something, the detail of the vein, of the muscle, of the face. No. In this case, the creator is Giger.
The scariest thing you can hide inside a monster is a human being. Your brain will find it eventually, and when it does, it won't let you unsee it. That's not a creature design, that's a trap, and 46 years later, it's still catching people. And there you have it, 15 weird and wild facts about Alien. Which one surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments and share this with a friend who still hasn't recovered from the Chestburster scene, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Until next time, this is Remember When.